Hello, everybody. This is Bruce from Oregon. It's the Bruce from Oregon show. This is episode 0. It might be the first, it might be the last. We don't know. Today, we are doing another installment in the Management Best Known Practices series. And I thought today we would try to learn a little bit about a concept called Maslow's Hierarchy of Needs and try to tease out how it relates to the job of management or a job you might have in the professional world. Now, this is something that came to my mind while having a discussion with our friend Dave Neal earlier today, because unfortunately it is Monday, December 16th, and we've just learned that our good YouTube friend and YouTube commentator Jeff Legal Vices has passed away. And it's a sad situation to see him pass. And it really makes you think about, are you living life to the fullest, doing everything you want to do? Um, and in my mind, there's a bit of a double edged sword here. Now, I've pulled up this quote from Gandhi that says, live as if you were to die tomorrow. So, don't hold back, do all the things you want to do. They say this means you should live life with a sense of urgency, making the most of every moment, as if it could be your last. And there's some truth to this, of course. Uh, but the double edged sword and the full quote gets into this. The complete quote they list here, if I can find it with my mouse. Where's my mouse? Um, it's live as if you were to die tomorrow, learn as if you were to live forever. Okay. So we want to always be learning and we want to always be moving ahead and also living life with a sense of urgency. So there's a double edged sword here. We can't just, I can't just go out and spend all my money tomorrow because what will I do the day after that? It's trouble. So there's a fine balancing act that we have to enact in reality as we live our lives. And understanding this a little bit better about how we can approach this double-edged sword can maybe help us if we are a manager or a leader, a technical leader in our day-to-day job. Okay. So we're going to get into this concept, which I think is the flip side of living life with a sense of urgency, which is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And you may be familiar with this already. If you are, this will be pretty straightforward. But I found there's a number of people who've never heard of this before, and I think it's a good framework for you to think about how human beings go through life and what's important. Okay. So, what is Maslow's hierarchy of needs? It is a psychological theory. It organizes human needs into a pyramid with basic needs at the bottom and more advanced needs at the top. And I don't know, it doesn't need to be a pyramid. It can be simply a list of different levels or categories in my mind. And to some extent, some of these things can feed into each other. I remember when I was in high school, I had this idea that maybe you could do a version of Maslow's hierarchy of needs that was more like a loop or a cylinder or a spiral or something like this. Uh, as kids come up with crazy ideas, as they do. But in any case, let's just go through the basic levels here. And then after we're done doing that, we'll get into how these might relate to a job as a manager, or how it might relate to thinking about what's going on in corporate America. Okay. So the first level here they call out is physiological. Okay. So these are things people need. And at the most basic level, you need food, water, shelter. Okay, those are the first 3 key things that anybody is going to need. And it makes sense. It makes sense. Air. If you can't breathe, you're in big trouble. Things like, heating or cooling, clothes, rest, sleep, and I guess reproduction. Yeah, I mean, if the human growth rate can drop below 1.0 for short periods of time, but not for an infinite amount of time, right? Otherwise, humans will go extinct. So there are these physiological needs or these basic needs at the first level. Okay. The second level is about safety. So once you have the physiological needs taken care of, you start to think about things like security, stability, and freedom from fear. The human brain through evolution is designed to look for threats and give you a fear response so that you can react, whether it's fight or flight or something else or some other strategic thing instead of a tactical thing in terms of fear, because something potentially that is a threat could be harmful to your physiological needs. So the next layer here is about safety. Having a secure environment, having stability, not having things change all the time. That's the second level. Okay. And then once these things are taken care of, humans tend to think about things like they call it the love and belonging level with friendship, intimacy, and acceptance. So this is where we start to get into more the outward interactions or the more direct interactions with society or a group of people, dealing with other people and having relationships with other people. Now, of course, in the modern society, we really can't achieve the first two levels without society, right? We have to have laws, we have to have streets, we have to have food distribution from farms to people and stores and all of this stuff. And so all these levels are dependent upon society, right? But we start to get into interpersonal relationships here in the third level in terms of what's fulfilling to human beings. Okay, that's really where we're going at the higher level. The next level being esteem, where they put respect, recognition, and status. Okay, so it's one thing, if you were independently wealthy and you could provide all the physiological needs you ever could want, all of the safety features in your house and everything that you could want. Maybe you have a partner and you have all the money you could ever want. Well, a lot of times people also want um, something a little extra. Maybe it's raising a family and having the recognition or the respect or the status, or, you know, maybe just from the experience of having a family or a job and a career path that lets them have a particular job title. So there's a level of self esteem that many people want that go beyond just physiological needs and safety needs. Okay. And so this is important to understand about people. The final level here they have is called self actualization. And here, this one relates to achieving one's full potential, and they also include creativity here. Yeah. So people will develop things, and a lot of times in the society we live in, where we might have a job, we can extract some creativity from our job, but we might also have hobbies. You might be interested in watercolor painting or making music or something like that, something creative. Decorating something or building something, doing something that goes above and beyond the basic day to day survival and a job in order to get a paycheck to survive. Okay. So they say Maslow's theory suggests that people are motivated to fill the needs in this order. Yeah. I mean, it's one thing if you have some creative outlets, like you can make some music, but if you freeze to death or you can't breathe, you are going to have a showstopper problem arise before you can make any music. Um, yeah. And they mentioned this is very interesting. This is sort of where it gets to the mindset we need to have when thinking about the people we're working with. People may not always progress through the hierarchy in a linear way. Okay. So it's not really like The Sims or something where it's like you have a bad toaster and you buy a good toaster and suddenly you get 100 more experience points or something in this linear fashion, right? They say life experiences like divorce or job loss can cause people to fluctuate between levels. Yeah. I mean, there's a famous quote from the TV show Hoarders where they go around and clean up. They go up and clean up. They try to clean up and help people who are hoarding and filling up their houses. And I think it was Matt Paxton on Hoarders said, like, unless you're very, very independently wealthy, pretty much everybody in sort of our modern society is like a few bad decisions or a few bad circumstances away from being homeless and basically pooping in a bucket. I think he was what he was going over in that episode. But anyway, yeah, we're all just a few bad situations away from pooping in a bucket. Bringing us back to the physiological level here. Okay. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs has been applied in many areas, including education, child development, healthcare, and business management. Yeah, and that's where we want to go is more the business management side. Psychologists can also use it to understand factors that might contribute to mental health conditions. Okay, so this is an interesting theory, and we're going to keep these levels in mind as we look at this second article I found, which is more focused, and it says applying Maslow's hierarchy in the finance industry. So here was one business example, and you can go through Google and find other examples and read ones that may be more applicable to what you're working on. But in any case, they present the same sort of pyramid, which you can see the Maslow levels here on the right: survival, security, belonging, importance, and self actualization. And in this table on the left, I'm not going to read through it, but they're basically tying these levels to when you have employees in a business situation. They're really trying to tie it to sort of more of a productivity standpoint or a mindset of the how the employee thinks about their job, which I think is okay, but it's a little bit like I want to think beyond just employee productivity, right? Because that's just a single metric. But they have some interesting analogies down here for each of the levels that I did want to go through. So, in terms of the physiological level, they're saying, if you don't pay your employees enough, if they don't have good benefits, if they don't have flexible work arrangements, right? These are the physiological aspects of somebody's job at work. So when we talk about having a great place to work, we're talking about two things. We're talking about the work they get to do and whether that's good work for them, great work, and also the place or the setting or the environment. And it could be the physical environment or it could be the virtual environment. And so we need to keep these things in mind and realize that when you talk about having and providing a great place to work for our employees, you know, number one here is physiological needs. And I have seen, and this happens to everybody, but you get so blinders on in terms of your email inbox every day, your technical deliverables, maybe these bureaucratic management deliverables. You don't get a chance to take a step back and think about these other vectors that managers have a huge impact on, whether they, you know, uh, think they do or not. Employees are always watching the managers and the management hierarchy way more closely and inferring conclusions about what's going on in the company and what is going on in the management hierarchy by what the managers do and say. Okay, so keep this in mind. So, physiological needs again, salary, benefits, work arrangements. These are things that you as a manager can fight on behalf of your employees or make good decisions on behalf of your employees. Okay. The second level is safety. And of course, you know, I worked in an industry where manufacturing was an important part of the product development. I worked in research and development myself, so I didn't work in manufacturing. But in any case, the minute you step out of your house to go to a job or to go somewhere related to your job, security and safety are paramount. You have to have a safe work environment for the employees. So, for example, if you are a manager and you see something about the place you work at that doesn't appear safe or doesn't appear secure, there's this old saying: if you see something, say something. And it's incumbent upon you as a manager to role model that safety first leadership style. Okay. Um, if you see something, say something, help your employees. The third level here, the love and belonging needs. This is more about a sense of community or maybe a corporate culture that you can help develop and role model and foster. And the company culture can be a lot of different things. It can be the way, we've had prior videos on things like status reports, meetings, interruptions, all these sorts of things, the language that you use, good documentation. As a manager, you can role model really good company culture and influence it and help people with this level of the psychological needs. Okay. The next level is the esteem level. And here, I think in a work environment, rewards are really where this can benefit the employees. So, understanding how employees like to be recognized or rewarded. Some of them want money, some of them want a plaque, some of them want their name, recognized in a big meeting. Everybody is different. But if you can figure out for your team or your teams what type of recognition works and do frequent rewards, they don't have to be huge. They could be frequent but small sort of rewards. That type of recognition is huge because remember, the employees are watching the managers and the management hierarchy very, very closely. So even if it's a small reward or a small little recognition at the end of a meeting or something, this can go a long way towards psychological safety, the psychological well being of the employees. And then at the top level, we have self actualization needs. This was, remember, we were talking about creativity, doing things like making music, artwork, all these things. So again, I think when it comes to corporate level, the analogy here, and they get into this, is like personal and professional growth. Okay. And I think this level is the hardest for managers. This is the toughest because when I think back to working with employees, what employees really sort of want is a career development path that they can understand. It doesn't necessarily have to be a career development plan. It could be a plan. You could say, what are we going to do in the next 5 years? Where do we want to get to? You could have goals. But I think just understanding different career development paths that are available and just even understanding what that means. What is possible in the place we work? You know, uh, if I do a great job at my job, what's next? Do I just look for a raise and just do the same thing? Do I look for a different type of job at some point? Do I become more of a technical leader? Do I become more of a management leader? Do I develop my career through a lateral career development path where I do a bunch of different jobs laterally with sort of the same salary or the same job title, but I learn new things? Or is it more and more and more responsibility as you go up and up and up towards that CEO, board of directors kind of level? And I think this is one that is hard for management hierarchies because managers, especially when you're a manager of a large organization, you're trying to wrap your head around career development in a way you can explain to a lot of employees. And I think what ends up happening is you can't really do it very well. It's very hard and it's very vague, right? And it's situational. So you just give up. And basically, there's no career development information or career development collateral. There's no track that somebody can follow to learn. I think it's better done on an individual basis in terms of talking to employees one on one, figuring out what their goals and their strengths are, and then tailoring some sort of career development plan for them. You know, do they just need to execute a bunch of projects and put experience under their belt before they think about doing something different? Do they need to begin mentoring other employees instead of just working on their own individual projects? These type of things, there's not going to be a general answer. Because if there was a recipe, like a cake baking recipe, where you could just follow the instructions, Everybody would just be following the instructions, and then they'd be like, "Why am I not the next CEO?" It doesn't really work that way. There's opportunity, and then there's people's capabilities, and then there's developing those capabilities. And what we want to do is we want to really focus on developing the capabilities so that when opportunities arise, we can take advantage of them. Because nobody's ever going to give you a cake baking recipe that says, well, there's going to be opportunities in the future, and this is when you will take advantage of them. As a manager, there's no promises you can make like that. So, what you really have to do is figure out how to learn, how to grow, how to be creative in your job and the job that your employees are doing so that when those nonlinear opportunities arise, you can take advantage of them and put your employee in the right place to go be successful and develop personal and professional growth. Okay. So I think this is kind of the most interesting one from a business perspective. Okay. So, yeah. And then down here, they even say effective management begins with understanding the diverse needs of employees. And that's really one of the things I want people to take away in addition to, the employees are always watching the managers. Employees have different needs and different when we look at the analogy of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, different employees may be at different places at different times. Um, and I would say understanding that is very important because it will affect where you spend your time. I've seen a lot of technical managers who have technical deliverables sort of starve their employees and not spend enough time with their employees on things their employees need. And I always approach things from the perspective of prioritizing any employee specific or what I would call human oriented issue with my employees above any kind of technical deliverable. So if I had employees who, needed a one-on-one conversation in the cafeteria, but I had to get a technical spreadsheet done, I would prioritize the employee. Okay. In terms of, you know, if you have high performing employees and they're doing their thing and you just need to wait for the annual performance reviews to, spend a lot of time trying to get them promoted or something like that, that's one thing. At the same time, once I had an employee who had, an issue that involved HR, and it wasn't because they were doing anything bad. It was that they were maybe a victim of a process or another employee, and they needed help from HR and from the management hierarchy. So we spent a lot of time on that. And some of the technical things we were doing at the time had to wait because when you have employees who are facing these specific issues, like physiological issues or safety issues, whether it's literally in terms of life, like, do they have a shelter? Or if it's more an analogy, like, do they have a good set of work deliverables? Are they getting paid enough to survive? These are the things that have to come first and have to be fixed first. So, in terms of management, that's my advice is to think about this a little bit, internalize it, and it's not like something you have to go do. It's just something that I think can inform your behavior as a manager and develop a team with, I guess, high productivity is nice, but high psychological safety and, advanced needs from a psychological perspective. Okay. And, that's just my advice, guys. Um, and I wanted to talk about that today because, again, we want to live our lives to the fullest. We want, we don't want to leave any opportunities behind. We don't want to have any regrets. Of course, the double edged sword is we have to maintain these hierarchy of needs for as long as we're here. Um, yeah, and that's all there is to it. So just try to be the best manager you can be and always try to find a way to learn something new and always try to find a way to just be better. Okay. Um, I'm reminded of some things that our friend Jeff Legal Vices said recently, and it applies when it comes to businesses and corporations. Because oftentimes when we're in business or we're dealing with a corporation or the corporation is doing things, it's not doing the most human things. And my perspective is, just because you can do something, just because a company can do something, just because a corporation can do something, just because a human can do something, it doesn't mean you always should. So think very carefully about what you can and can't do and what you should and shouldn't do. And always try to be a better version of yourself tomorrow than you were today. And if you do that, we'll be taking Jeff's advice and honoring his memory. It's been a tough day. I'm recording this Monday. I'll air it Tuesday. But guys, if you've stuck around this long, thank you so much for listening. I will see you next week. This is Bruce from Oregon. It's been the Bruce from Oregon Show. Have a good one.